Welcome. For over 2 decades now, Like It Is has aired an assortment of programs on Malcolm X. In this edition, still another aspect of this historic figure will be explored. Abdullah Abdur-Razzaq was at Malcolm's side during much of the last turbulent year of his life. Mr. Razzaq has been all but silent since Malcolm's assassination, but has now decided to come forward and tell what he experienced. That narrative begins right after this. Welcome to Like It Is.
Thank you for having me.
Well, before we go, I was doing a little quick arithmetic here. It's hard to imagine that had he lived, Malcolm would have been 72.
Yes.
Hard to believe.
Yes.
How did you run into him? What attracted you to him, or how did you get to know him?
I got to know him by going to Mosque number 7 at 116th Street and Lenox Avenue.
Well, wait a minute. How did that happen? You just...
No. I had heard a lot about an organization to which he belonged, the Nation of Islam, whom I dismissed as a lunatic fringe organization. But a friend implored me to go, and eventually I did. And
wait. Why did you view it as a lunatic fringe? What you heard or read about them?
Yeah.
And what was it that you heard that made you think that they were a lunatic fringe?
Well, they were saying that the white man is the devil. And whereas I conceded that he was not a very pleasant person to me and my family, I thought it was ludicrous to call a man the devil.
Mm-hmm.
And I dismissed them. I had heard of Malcolm X as the leading exponent of this particular theory, which had been promulgated by Mr. Elijah Muhammad, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, as he was called. And a friend implored me and besought me and eventually got me to go to Mosque number 7. And I was first very offended because they searched me before I went in.
What was your religion up until then?
I was an atheist. I was raised in a Baptist family. My father was a leftist or communist, and I had gone to a Presbyterian school. I had to read the entire Bible, and I just thought it was a bunch of myths, didn't have anything to do with me. It was mostly about the Hebrew people. And at that stage of my life, the things I was doing didn't fit in with the canons of Christianity. I was kind of a Mac Daddy running up and down the road, mistreating women. So I was an atheist. I had reached a conclusion that none of this had done us any good during slavery. We were still the last hired, the first fired, lived in the worst houses. And even when we served in the armed forces, when we came back, we were treated like last year's horse manure.
Well, a lot of people felt that way. And there were other factions in the 1950s and 60s that were beginning to say the same thing that you're saying now. How did the rest of the civil rights movement or the rest of the movement strike you?
Well, the civil rights movement didn't impress me at all. I had some small historical perspective at the time, and I had known that wherever people of European descent went and met anyone with a darker skin color, they just treated them differently. I had been particularly impressed with a movie called Hawaii with a man named Von Sydow, where he was a missionary, and he went to Hawaii, and one of the natives there embraced Christianity, became a real convert, and he thought he should work on the island that he grew up in, and Von Sydow told him no, he wasn't white. The fact that you're a good Christian doesn't mean that you can represent Christianity. It has to be done by someone who is white. Little anomalies like that.
Okay, so you were an agnostic on many levels.
I was an atheist.
All right.
Not an agnostic. I was an atheist. I did not believe in God because I figured, you know, if there's God, you know, how did we get in this position? Why don't he come and help us, you know? I didn't see any relationship.
And despite this position, your buddy, your friend, convinced you to go and hear this man.
Yeah.
Was it the mosque in general that he wanted you to witness and experience, or this man in particular?
He wanted me to hear Malcolm X.
All right. What did you hear, and what was the impact?
Well, the first time I went, Malcolm wasn't speaking. This Lewis, at the time known as Lewis X, now known as Louis Farrakhan, was speaking. And I said, this man has got up here and lost his mind. He was talking about white people. I had never heard or even dreamt of them being talked about like that in their own country. So I said, this is a case of temporary insanity or something. This man has lost his mind up here. But people were like applauding and saying, you know, teach brother minister, teach brother minister. So I said, wow, I didn't.
This is at 116th
This was
Lennox?
at 116th Street and Lenox Avenue, mosque number 7.
So what happened? When you left?
When I left, I said, I'll never go back there again. I was afraid. I was really afraid.
Mm-hmm.
I almost urinated on myself. I was afraid. I said, my God, what is this? What is going on here? And I wanted to leave, but I was afraid to leave too.
Why?
Because they had like these bald-headed brothers. They wore very short-cut haircuts, you know, and they were definitely not people that you mess with. You could see they had a force about them.
Yeah.
And they sat you down. You couldn't just go in and sit down. So you were surrounded by people. And I felt, you know, man, let me get out of here. So when I got out, and I thought the FBI or somebody was going to come in and arrest everyone. Whew.
So what got you back there after this experience?
It started sinking in. When I lived down in the village at the time. And when I got on the subway and went back, I wondered, I said, have they been teaching this all the time? Why didn't he get arrested? Why didn't the police break in? And some of the things that he said started like settling in my mind, but I still made up my mind I wasn't going. That was a Sunday. And on Monday, they did not have meetings. And on Tuesday, they did not have meetings. So between Sunday and Wednesday, some of this stuff started sinking in my mind. I said, let me go back and see. Everybody can't be teaching the same thing as this guy was, so let me go back. So I went back, and a fellow named Henry was teaching. And he was teaching the same thing, but in a more subdued manner. He didn't seem like he was like a maniac or something, you know? So I said, wow. But I still, now my curiosity was piqued. And I said, this guy Malcolm, let me go see what he's saying, you know? And eventually, I think the next Sunday, he taught, and I went there, and I was overwhelmed. I was really impressed, you know?
What was it that impressed you?
One, his delivery. He didn't deliver like an evangelist. He was more like a teacher, which is what I was accustomed to, you know. He like lectured, and he had a blackboard, he had a piece of chalk, and he asked questions afterward. All the ministers asked questions, but his manner in dealing with questions was more deft. And I challenged. I defended white people to the nines. I said, you know, raised my hand. He said, yes, brother. And I'd say what I had to say. I said, you know, how you gonna call a white man the devil? It doesn't even make any sense, you know? Why don't you be historical? Stop this mythological BS, you know?
You didn't say that. Not with the fruit of Islam there.
No, BS. I said, like, BS. Just, you know, this crap. And he said, I can understand why you feel that way, brother. So and so and so and so and so. And then he would give an answer. I'd think about it. I said, you know, that makes no sense. And I did this for 9 months. Every Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday, I went there.
Okay, we got to take a break.
Yeah.
And then we'll continue with this story. I got to tell you that a lot of what you're saying is very familiar to me. I have to admit that when I heard some of those same pronouncements, only I was seeing it on television and whatnot, in the news, I was put off too. So much so that I didn't want to go and hear this man. At least you went and heard him. I didn't go to hear him. So I can relate to what you were saying. But anyhow, to continue with your story, you kept going back for about 9 months.
Yes.
And over this period of time, what happened?
I became acquainted with the doctrine. I became impressed with Brother Malcolm as well as other ministers who taught this doctrine. I found out that the organization was not as much against anyone as they were for the people who had been brought to this country and chained and had been mistreated ever since. And this made me feel like, well, maybe there is some hope. And if these people say that God sent someone here, then the belief in God became acceptable and logical to me, because I said, if we are a people and we come from God and we get in this position and nobody comes to help us, everybody comes to, to step on us, why should I believe in God? But then they taught that, well, yes, God sent someone over here to look for this lost, found nation of Islam who was lost and now found, and they related that to the prodigal son and to Joseph being sold into slavery. And the Bible now became meaningful to me, because they said the Bible is all about you. They said, and all the slaves in the Bible become free people. That's who God is going for, the slave. Hey, I said, well, now I got a vested interest in this thing. It became meaningful to me.
Did you join?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
I see. So what happened? Did you get close to Malcolm initially, or were you just a member of the Nation of Islam per se?
Initially, I was just a member, but in the Nation, when you went into the mosque, they took your Christian first name, right? The first name that your mother gave you, and they put an X after it, and then your last name. So I was James 67 X Warden.
For those who don't understand what the 67 means.
That means that I was the 67th brother whose name was James in mosque number 7. Okay. So there were 66 other brothers named James before myself.
Okay.
Now Malcolm had an interest in numerology. And according to the teachings of the Nation of Islam, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the devil was to be enchained for 6,000 years. And the 7,000th year, the black man, the lost foundation, was to become free and come into their own again. So I was like the end of 6 and the beginning of 7. And Malcolm never called me by my name. He just called me by my number. He'd say 67. Is 67 in here? Because there were more Jameses in the mosque than anyone else. So by my being the 67th brother named James, I was the highest number in the mosque.
How long did you stay in the Nation? We need to really get down to this, to the point of us doing this program, which is the last year of his life.
Yeah.
How long did you stay in the Nation?
Until about December of 1963, January of 1964.
Mm-hmm. In that period, did you notice any changes, or did you develop any insights that changed you and your attitude towards the Nation?
Yes, definitely, yeah.
What were they?
Well, two things. One, Brother Malcolm, until this particular time, had always taught that the Quran was a pure revelation from Allah, from God, and that the Bible had been pure in its original form, but that it had been doctored with. And he said there's proof that it had been doctored with is that they had men who were prophets doing things that were wrong. For instance, David sending Lemuel off to get killed, a lieutenant, so that he could lay with his wife Bathsheba. Malcolm said prophets don't do that. What separates prophets from men is that these men are imbued with God and cannot do anything that is contrary to God. Okay?
So what's the point of you telling me this?
Because then later on, Malcolm said months later, just before I really left, he said, the way you measure a man is by a scale. He can do bad, but if he does more good than he does bad, he's considered a good man.
Okay.
And I said, wow, that's at variance with what he's been teaching. That was the only inconsistency that I ever heard Malcolm make.
Oh, because up to then he had said the man can do no wrong.
Can do no wrong.
I see.
A prophet can do no wrong. Now he was saying a prophet could do wrong. The Bible now is correct because it has prophets doing right and wrong, because in the final analysis they're measured in the balance.
So what impact did it have, that change?
I said, he's trying to protect somebody. To myself. To myself, I wouldn't say it out loud. And I said, Mr. Muhammad. And then I just dismissed it. But that was the first thing. The second thing was that Ethel Sharif, the Supreme Captain of the MGT and GCC, and wife to Mr. Brother Raymond Sharif, who was the Supreme Captain of the FOI, came to New York and made some kind of comments about brothers not fulfilling the sexual needs of their wives. And at the same time, Raymond Sharif, it was a dinner being given. Raymond Sharif, they took up a collection to pay on his Lincoln Continental, I think. I said, wait a minute, this is getting like a church now. Why should I be walking and making payments on his Continental? This is getting very churchified.
What
so
are these initials that you were telling me? MTG, what does that stand for?
MGT and
MGT.
GCC, Muslim Girls Training in General Civilization Class, a class established by our Prophet and Savior, WD Fard, to teach our women how to cook, sew, take care of their husbands, and in general how to act at home and abroad. All of the women in the Nation of Islam were MGT or GCC. MGC and GCC class. They were called for short to MGT. All the brothers were the FOI, they were called FOI.
Gotcha. We need to take a break and then we'll press forward.
Yes.
You're getting these inconsistencies and you're beginning to raise these questions. Had you become close to Malcolm, and did you raise these questions to him?
I had become closer to him, but not close enough to involve myself with any doctrinal problems. I just reached a conclusion on my own that it was time for me. This had been a phase of my life that had been fulfilled. I had been converted from an atheist to a believer in God, but I had other things to do. And so I just started drifting away from the nation.
Did he ask you why?
No, I hadn't. I started missing meetings and things of that nature, but I didn't completely leave. I was an official. I was the circulation manager of the Muhammad Speaks newspaper, and I was also a lieutenant. My attendance and my belief and my fervor had been dampened, right? I didn't leave.
All right. In '63, President Kennedy is assassinated, and Malcolm is silenced for making what was viewed as intemperate remarks.
Yes.
The chickens had come home to roost.
Yeah.
And he's silenced for 90 days. Yeah. After which he does not return. He was not allowed to return, he says. Where were you in that scenario? And what happened thereafter? Did you gravitate toward him when he found he couldn't rejoin and formed his other two organizations? Did you gravitate toward him, or did you still lay out?
Well, actually, at the December 10th meeting at Manhattan Center, I officiated. I was on the telephone to him at home, letting him know what was going on at the meeting.
Oh.
So I had not left the nation. And he had specifically asked that I be there, so I was. At that meeting, as you know, I won't go into it, he made a statement about chickens coming home to roost in response to a reporter's question. And I subsequently found out that he had been silenced. And it was his belief that he had been silenced from speaking outside of the mosques. He did not know that he would not be allowed to take the rostrum in his own mosque. And I was there the day that he came into the door and expected to come up to the mosque, and Captain Joseph stopped him. That's when I was aware that something was wrong, but I didn't know at the moment what. Eventually it was announced throughout the nation that Minister Malcolm had been silenced and that he could not come into the mosque. He was in Class F, Class C or Class F, which meant 90 days out of the mosque. No one can speak to you except to give the greetings, Assalamu alaikum. Can't stop and talk to you, anything like that. And that didn't bother me too much. I mean, I figured after 90 days he'd come back. But then the brothers down in the restaurant, there was a Temple No. 7 restaurant, brothers in there started talking about kill him. Yeah, Big Red, yeah, get rid of him. He never was with the messenger, blah, blah, which was really kind of surprising. So I called him and spoke to his wife. And I said, tell my big brother, just be careful. So she said, be careful of what? I said, just tell him be careful. She said, do you want to speak to him? I said, no, because it was forbidden for me to speak to him. So this kill Malcolm, kill Red started increasing. And so I called again. And I spoke to her again. And I think I called a third or fourth time. Anyway, the last time I called, he took the phone from her. And he said, look, brother, if you got something to say, say it. What is this? I said, hey, well, brother, they're talking about killing you. Well, he laughed. He said, I'm not a Sunday Muslim. He said, I put 12 years into the mosque. No brother would kill me. I said, they're seriously talking about killing you now, and it's escalating. So he asked, would I meet him? I asked where. He said, yeah, we met on 116th Street and 1st or 2nd Avenue or something. And he drove over to Morningside Park between 113th and 114th, parked the car there, and talked to me for about an hour or two about things that were going on in the nation. And at that time, he still expected to be reinstituted. And I said, you're never going back in the mosque. He said, why? I said, John Ali and Joseph, they're going around making all kind of weird statements, hinting that you are sending letters from New York threatening Mr. Muhammad's life and things like that. Yeah, John Ali came and said, yeah, letter come from the East Coast threatening the messenger's life and alluding, but not saying that Malcolm did this, but hinting. So he told me that he wanted to, if this did not happen after March 12th, because I believe he was put in this class December 12th. March 12th would have made 90 days. So he said if he was not reinstated after that, that he was going to strike out on his own. So I said, well, look, I put 3 years in the United States Army and got, you know, treated like a piece of last year's horse manure. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll give you a year of my life. I said, but under these conditions, don't lie to me and don't chump me off. Don't tell me something that's not true. Have me out in left field thinking one thing and something else is going on. He said, I wouldn't do that to you, brother. He said, I got a great deal of respect for your intelligence. You're very perceptive. You even shock me sometimes. I said, that's all I ask. I don't know what you're trying to do, but I feel, one, you were put out without a trial. That was the most damning thing to me. In the nation, you were supposed to get a trial. We were a little national. On the national, it said FJE or something, freedom, justice, and equality. That was, every brother was supposed to have a trial. No matter what he did, he was supposed to stand before the body and be able to defend himself, and Malcolm wasn't. And I said, that's not a way to treat a man who has lived the nation. I mean, everything he did was for the nation. I saw him once about to put his wife out of the mosque. I mean, that guy was, he was a straight arrow for the Nation of Islam.
He was loyal.
There's no question. Even Mr. Muhammad said that. He says, you see this man? He's a true follower. He'll never desert me. Mr. Muhammad said that in Philadelphia. I heard him say it. So,
if this is so, even though he was silenced, even if he was ousted, why was that kind of talk permitted about taking his life?
I think it was not only permitted, that it was encouraged, because no brother would dare say anything like that. You couldn't even say, that brother don't take a bath. You got 30 days for saying something like that. So for going around, and Mr. Muhammad had also written in the Supreme Wisdom, and he also said this, I think, at Uline Arena. He says, you see these brothers? These are Muslims. He says, anyone who kills one of these brothers must be killed. He who murders one of these brothers must be murdered. He said, even if he's his own brother, he must be murdered. You can't take the lives of one of these. I heard him say this. So for brothers now to go out and start talking about killing him, someone had to give them permission or encourage them to do this, in my opinion.
All right. That's what we want, and that's what we'll continue to hear after this. This hour is going to get away from us, and we're going to be sorry that we, unless we move forward and really get to the nitty-gritty. 1965, February 21st, was the day when Malcolm was taken off the planet. And my question to you is, what is your analysis of what happened that day? And what forces do you think were behind his assassination?
Well, there's no question in my mind. Malcolm was executed. He was not assassinated. When you assassinate someone, you're only concerned with taking his life. When you execute someone, you're concerned with the manner and the audience that see this. and you also have an authority behind you when someone is executed. A state, an organization. Malcolm was not executed. He is not assassinated. He was executed. And there is no question in my mind that the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Bureau of Special Services of the New York Police Department, in cohort with those who pulled the trigger. Evidence has come out, which surprises me. Norman 3X Butler and Thomas 15X Johnson were nowhere near the Audubon Ballroom when Malcolm was executed. There were too many of us there that knew Norman and knew Thomas.
You were there?
I was there. Definitely I was there.
Well, tell us what you saw.
I didn't see the assassination because I was backstage. I didn't see him being killed, right? But I know that with 50 or 60 people that were in the Nation of Islam that knew Norman and knew Thomas, if they had played any hand in this execution, some would have said Norman and Thomas did it, right? But no one did this. The police went out and caught them because they had been involved in something else that was against the law, but not in Audubon Ballroom. Reuben Francis shot Tommy Hagen. He also said...
He was an undercover police officer. Reuben?
No, Reuben Francis was the daytime...
Gene Roberts was the undercover.
Yeah, Gene Roberts from... Yeah, Reuben shot a fellow right in the side. This fellow kept running outside. Talmadge Hayer, or Tommy Hagen as he had been called, some kind of way fell down. Reuben shot him in the leg. He drew down on Reuben and his gun misfired. He didn't get a bullet off. If anybody knows that Norman and Thomas were not, it was Reuben. But Reuben was never called to testify. Nobody who knew that Norman and Thomas was not there was called to testify. And the police, when they questioned us, this is the question they asked. Can you prove that Thomas and Norman were not in the Audubon Ballroom? You can't prove a negative. I said, no, I can't prove that they were not here. They could have been under the chair. They could have been up in the ceiling. They could have been down in the basement. But if I was a police officer, I would have asked, did you see Norman or Thomas in the Audubon Ballroom? And if you ask 150 people and none of them say, yeah, I saw him, then the chances are they were not there. Right?
What did you do when the shots rang out?
I was in the back. When the shots rang out, Benjamin came and dived down to the floor. I then walked out to the stage. By the time I walked out to the stage, people were up on the stage. Malcolm was laying down, and I saw the life go out of his body, right? That's where I was. I had a, well, that's all right. I had a .357 Magnum that a character gave me. I was going to shoot Joseph. But I had brought a man from the Rabiat al-Islami, the World Muslim League, Sheikh Ahmed Hassoun, who Malcolm had gotten from Saudi Arabia to come and teach Islam to us, and I was like his man Friday. So I had taken him to the Audubon Ballroom. And as I was walking out, I said, oh my God, I left Sheikh Hassoun. So I came back to get him. Now, you know, the police asked me, where did you go when you left the Audubon Ballroom? I said, I was going up. Then I said to myself, how do they know that I left? Because I left and then turned around and came back. I hadn't been gone more than 10 minutes to get Sheikh Hassoun because I was taking care of him. So I said, they must have photographed this whole thing. And sure enough, they had a seating plan. They knew where everybody was seating in the Audubon Ballroom. I said, then Reuben, who had shot Talmadge Hagen, that night, 2 detectives came to the Hotel Teresa and asked me would I come to the precinct with them, up 160-some Street. I said, no, I'm not coming with you anywhere. So they said, why not? I said, so you can beat me to death in the precinct or coerce something out of me? You got to be crazy. Nobody knows where I am, and I'm going to come with you to the precinct. At that time, Reuben came in. So one of the detectives, or both of them, were black, and he said, look, help get me off the hook. So I said, okay, I'll come if someone comes with me. So I said, Reuben, will you come with me to the precinct? So he says, yeah. We get to the precinct, and there's a reporter there and said, that's the one that shot him. And Reuben got arrested. I said, of all of the turmoil and hullabaloo that was going around in the Audubon Ballroom, how could one reporter identify Reuben? Reuben looked like anybody else. He didn't have 3 heads or 2 noses or 4 ears, you know. Anyway, Reuben got arrested. And Fulton, FBI agent Fulton was there with a sawed-off shotgun he was holding with a pencil by the trigger housing, and he named the weapons that were used. He was calling in a report. Somebody had tried to sell me some plastic explosive. So I had written a letter to Adam Clayton Powell, to the FBI, because I thought they were trying to get Malcolm in trouble. So I had this letter that I had written to the FBI, but I hadn't mailed it. I gave it to Fulton. I had him sign something for it. That's that.
How many people who were around Malcolm would you say had his interests at heart?
Most.
Those around him were genuinely interested in protecting him?
Most. Interested in, but not capable of.
All right, let's take a break and we'll be back with more. You say that you believe, and there's been talk down through the years, that the Bureau was after him and the CIA and all of that, in concert with those who pulled the trigger.
Yes, yes.
You didn't specify. Do you believe that the Nation of Islam was involved in the assassination?
Yes. I believe that the Nation of Islam was used to make smoke so someone else could make fire. Everywhere that Malcolm went, there were brothers from the FOI standing around acting funny and things like that, and Malcolm kept saying that the nation is gonna. There was a fellow named Mark Crawford from Life magazine. He attended a meeting at the high level in the nation, and they said they were gonna break Malcolm's legs. Well, if you're gonna do something like this in the FOI, you don't tell anybody.
You do
right?
it.
No, you do it. You don't tell anybody. Then wherever we went to a program or to the executive house in Chicago, brothers from the FOI would come around, but they would be clean, dressed in shirt and tie, and wearing a national. And I knew as a lieutenant, no one from the FOI will ever commit a crime while wearing the national. We were law-abiding. We're not supposed to carry weapons, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and we abided by that.
But let's get to the central point. You're saying that there were members of the nation who were threatening Malcolm as a decoy?
Yes, I believe that everything that was done in the nation concerning Malcolm was decoy. And Malcolm said the last week of his life, he said, he finally listened. He said, I am going to stop saying that it is the nation that is after me because I'm just leaving the door open for anyone to come in and come in. Did the nation prevent him from landing in France? Did the nation poison him in Egypt? The nation was not capable of doing things like this unless it's an international organization on a level that I didn't know anything about. Everywhere he went, he was followed. Did the nation put a tail on him in New York? No, the Bureau of Special Services did that. Arthur Fulton, Latini, and a man named Aubrey Lewis were assigned to him by the FBI. Why were they assigned to him? They weren't assigned to him for his health. Everywhere that he went was bugged. The FBI came to his house and tried to get him to turn coat on the nation. I mean, that's their job. See, people have this vision of the FBI. In my personal case, they went around to every job where I worked and told people, watch this guy, keep your eyes on him. The people said, what's the matter with him? He's a good worker. Watch him, get rid of him. The next thing I know, I'm unemployed. So I had to go around from door to door for 11 years selling perfume to make a living and take care of my family.
Are you telling me that you believe that this was done, this role that the nation played as a decoy?
Yeah.
For other interests to take out? That they did this knowingly or unwittingly?
I think that the officials in the nation, that high officials like John Ali, and I'll name names, did this because they had vested interests that they wanted to protect, and did this in order that others could come in and kill Malcolm and they could say I didn't have anything to do with it.
Itemize the vested interests you're talking about.
Malcolm told me this. I will repeat what he said. He said that Mr. Muhammad's children used to all work for someone else. And he said, it's a shame that your children should have to work for someone else. They should work for the nation. So all of them got like jobs related to the nation, okay? He said that Harriet, who had been Brother Akbar's wife, I believe, she said that she heard one of the high people, they say, we better get all that we can out of this organization before these fools that are following my father wake up. So there was this group that benefited by being affiliated with the nation, and in the case of the dissolution of the nation, they would have been lost, right? Now, Malcolm made a speech called a ballot or bullet speech in Detroit, I believe. And that speech talked about revolution, bloody revolution. And it is my belief that the authorities got together and said, wait a minute now, this man is dangerous when he starts talking about revolution. And they went to someone in the nation and said, look, we got to get rid of this man. If we don't get rid of him, everything that you got is going to be lost. Because the thing, Malcolm was never harmed by anyone in the nation. People ran down the highway after him with guns, did all kinds of things. They were making, Malcolm could have easily been killed. You had brothers from mosques all over the United States. If someone had told them, some of the more zealous ones said, look, go kill Malcolm, they would have done it. So why would you pick a day when his wife and his children are there at the Audubon Ballroom and execute him publicly except to put fear into the people who were starting the revolution? What happened to Nat Turner, Denmark Vesey, Gabriel Prosser, Cuffy? They were executed.
You're saying that there are members of the nation who did this because they didn't want what they had vested in the nation to be disturbed,
yes,
and they felt that Malcolm was a threat to whatever it is
yes,
they wanted to get out
yes,
of the nation.
And what they did was harmless. All
Well,
they did was make smoke. They didn't make no fire.
Well, we're talking about the tentacles now.
Yeah.
But what about the head of the octopus?
I think.
What about Chicago? What about Elijah Muhammad? Do you think that this was going on with his knowledge? And do you have any information to substantiate?
To be frank with you, I don't think he had full knowledge, but he couldn't have been ignorant. He couldn't have been ignorant. He couldn't have had the national secretary couldn't have come from Chicago to New York and made statements like he made, or published things in the Muhammad Speaks newspaper saying that Donald Washington and Omar Ahmed are on a mission from New York to come kill Elijah Muhammad.
Kill who?
Mr. Muhammad. They put that in the Muhammad Speaks newspaper. I mean, but everything else was smoke. Smoke, putting pictures of Malcolm's head bouncing down the steps in the Muhammad Speaks newspaper to create an atmosphere so that he could then be killed easily without anyone knowing from what true direction the hand had come. Malcolm, it was been so easy to kill Malcolm in another venue. He could have been killed at his house. He could have been killed in his car.
Well, they bombed his house the week before.
Oh, they didn't bomb his house. If they bombed the house wouldn't be there.
Firebomb.
Okay, they say that the Nation of Islam firebombed the house, right? Why would they firebomb their own house? It was their house. It was not Malcolm's house. Would you firebomb your own house? What kind of sense does that make? And at the same time, bomb the mosque and say, we did it. No. These were the hands of professional arsonists that had used this method from time immemorial to divide and conquer, the same way did with the Native American. Get the Cheyenne against the Sioux and then take both their lands.
Well, I have Malcolm on film saying after his house had been firebombed, he said that it was done by the nation.
Of
and
course.
they're accusing him of having set fire to his own house.
Yes, yes, yes. He said that. And everything that had come along, somebody from the nation was involved visibly. Can't you see that? What else would Malcolm say? That's just what they wanted him to say. But then at the Hotel Teresa, he finally realized. You know what I said to him? I said, Brother Malcolm, there are people who would kill you, yes. But there is not one brother in the Nation of Islam, including Clarence in Boston, that would bomb your house knowing your children are in it. They just weren't that cruel. And Malcolm finally, he said, you know, every time I say that the nation is involved in this, I'm leaving the door open for someone else to come in. He said it publicly. Not one thing appeared about it in the newspaper.
Last break.
Yeah.
Stay with us. You're telling me this over 30 years after the deed was done, and you've had a lot of time to reflect.
Yes.
Has anything ever swayed you in the development of what you've just told me now and in the development of your thoughts?
Yeah, one thing that really got me is that for 30 years, I have been saying Norman and Thomas were not involved in this. And everybody is treating me like I was trying to protect them. No one listened to me. And then some brothers asked me to do a TV thing, and I did it. And they said something about the brothers that killed Malcolm. And I said Norman and Thomas had nothing to do with it. And they said, we're not talking about Norman and Thomas. And I said, well, who are you talking about? And they said, the other guys that Talmadge had named. I said, you mean to say he named someone else? Because I've been away for 12 years. I was in Guyana in the jungle. So a lot of things that happened here I didn't know about. And I had never known this. And you showed me a clip too, that he named the people. Have any pictures ever been taken? Has anybody investigated this? People are going around saying I had something to do with Malcolm's death. And I want to know how someone could have the unmitigated audacity to say this if they have the names of people who Talmadge Hayer said had something to do with killing Malcolm. And why haven't the police investigated or the FBI investigated these people? And how did Thomas and Norman stay in prison for 25 or 30 years for something that they didn't do when there's no one who can point to them and say this was the man who pulled the trigger, and the FBI and the police department know that they were not there? Then who are they protecting? If you got the names of the people who Talmadge Hagan says, we know that Talmadge Hagan was involved in it because he got shot at the place. Why did the police deputy chief inspector say that 2 men were under arrest and one of them disappeared? Come on, this whole thing is Mickey Mouse.
Do you think that it was just law enforcement authorities like the Bureau and the CIA that were involved, or are there other factions that may have been involved in the assassination?
Okay, I have to answer that question rhetorically. If the FBI and the Bureau of Special Services were involved, who else can be involved at their level? They don't get involved. That's like asking, does Gimbel's have a mom and pop grocery store on 56th Street? I mean, they don't operate like that. Anytime that they operate, they are the boss. They are the ones in charge. The FBI has a liaison with every police department in the United States. And they give these police departments euphemism: Bureau of Special Services, Bureau of Special Safety, Bureau of Public Traffic, or some crap like that. But their job, they walk around, they have gloves with BB shots in them. So when they smack you, they knock your head over here. They have special training, right? And not to understand this makes a guy like me sound like a maniac. But I know, I study these things. I had to, and I'm interested in stuff like this. When they decide that they're going to kill somebody, they'll get someone who is, for instance, the FBI has a people called former agents of the FBI. They all get security jobs. Aubrey Lewis became in charge of security for Woolworth department stores. He came to me and told me he was an agent. What the heck were they following Malcolm around for? For his health? To do phlebotomy? No, they wanted to get him in a position so if he mess up, they could kill him. You see, they don't just take you off any time. They wait and see if you're dangerous. They started a dossier on Malcolm because he wrote a letter to Paul Robeson. He wasn't even in the nation. They off Patrice Lumumba. Eisenhower gave the order, get rid of him. This is part and parcel of the way they operate.
Young people who really didn't know much about the era of which we speak, much less the man, much less the organization. Yeah. Tell them who was taken from us. Tell me what's your impression of Malcolm. What was his value in your viewpoint? All right. What was his value to you?
Well, he was a man. He had started out wrong. He didn't drink. He didn't smoke. He didn't use drugs. He didn't chase women. He focused his life on what has been done to me and my forefathers. And I am going to try to straighten it out. And for that, he was killed. Because this country has a covert policy that those of us who were brought here in slave ships will never be free. We are to be slaves in perpetuity. The Civil Rights Law of 1965 was also passed in 1865. But these dogs never planned to implement it.
What did he give to you in your life?
A concept that I will you or nil you be free? And I will do it on my own because there's no one on this earth that's going to help me.
How are you doing now in your life?
I'm okay. I'm all right. I got no complaints. I'm alive. When I look at people like Clarence 7X is dead, Joseph is dead. I understand Brother Wilfred is very sick. I understand Torrey is very sick. I can get up in the morning and look myself in the face and say, you are descended from 400 years of chattel slavery, but you're still alive, and that is a victory. I still have some sanity left. That is a victory. I still have goals in my life. That is a victory. Brothers like Martin Luther King, who was again a Mickey Mouse execution, assassination. John F. Kennedy, a Mickey Mouse assassination. Anybody could believe that Lee Harvey Oswald bought a $12 rifle and killed the President of the United States, and then somebody walks into a police station and blows his brains out. Anybody who could believe that got sawdust in the back of their head.
We are out of time.
Yeah.
But I do thank you for giving us so much. Thanks for being part of this program.
Thanks for having me. Sorry I broke down.
For a transcript, send $4 to Like It Is, 800 All News, 1535 Grand Street, Denver, Colorado, 80203. For rest service, call 1-800 All News or visit their website at www.800allnews.com. Welcome. For over 2 decades.
Gone to a Presbyterian school. I had to read the entire Bible, and I just thought it was a bunch of myths. Didn't have anything to do with me. It was mostly about the Hebrew people. And at that stage of my life, the things I was doing didn't fit in with the canons of Christianity. I was kind of a Mac Daddy running up and down the road, mistreating women. So I was an atheist. I had reached a conclusion that none of this had done us any good during slavery. We were still the last hired, the first fired, lived in the worst houses. And even when we served in the armed forces, when we came back, we were treated like last year's horse manure.
Well, a lot of people felt that way, and there were other factions in the 1950s and 60s that were beginning to say the same thing that you're saying now. How did the rest of the civil rights movement, or the rest of the movement, strike you?
Well, the civil rights movement didn't impress me at all. I had some small historical perspective at the time, and whom I dismissed as a lunatic fringe organization. But a friend implored me to go and go and go and go, and eventually I did. And
Wait. Why did you view it as a lunatic fringe? What you heard or read about them?
Yeah.
And what was it that you heard that made you think that they were a lunatic fringe?
Well, they were saying that the white man is the devil. And whereas I conceded that he was not a very pleasant person to me and my family, I thought it was ludicrous to call a man the devil.
Mm-hmm.
And I dismissed them. I had heard of Malcolm X as the leading exponent of this particular theory, which had been promulgated by Mr. Elijah Muhammad, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, as he was called. And a friend implored me and besought me and eventually got me to go to Mosque number 7. And I was first very offended because they searched me before I went in.
What was your religion up until then?
I was an atheist. I was raised in a Baptist family. My father was a leftist or communist, and I had
Now, like it has aired an assortment of programs on Malcolm X. In this edition, still another aspect of this historic figure will be explored. Abdullah Abdur-Razzaq was at Malcolm's side during much of the last turbulent year of his life. Mr. Razzaq has been all but silent since Malcolm's assassination, but has now decided to come forward and tell what he experienced. That narrative begins right after this. Welcome to Like It Is.
Thank you for having me.
Well, before we go, I was doing a little quick arithmetic here. It's hard to imagine that had he lived, Malcolm would have been 72.
Yes.
Hard to believe.
Yes.
How did you run into him? What attracted you to him, or how did you get to know him?
I got to know him by going to Mosque number 7 at 116th Street and Lenox Avenue.
Well, wait a minute. How did that happen? You just...
No. I had heard a lot about an organization to which he belonged, the Nation of Islam,